So I think it would be nice, actually, to read it with my eyes.
England, a castle nation. I love that pause. There's everything in the pause.
Yeah, it's hot, but I can't be bothered putting those gloves back on.
The pause means the 2 dots.
Oh, right.
I wish I knew what they were
There isn't 2
called.
dots.
There is on the title thing.
Oh, is there? Oh no, what am I doing? I need to put it on the Swift, don't I?
Something went wrong.
I offered to help, but she wouldn't.
Dan said, "Oh, can I help?" I said, "Oh, go away."
As well as sort of going back and re-listening to it.
You can finish off.
Yes, I'm getting distracted by reading that page.
What's an ampersand?
It's an and symbol.
Oh, okay.
That's an ampersand.
Right.
Do you know when you do that loopy and thing?
I just like saying it.
That's
You
ampersand.
see, I hope you can see this. It breaks into blue and then tons of pink. You can absolutely see the specks of pink. Put your other gloves on, Kay. It's boiling.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show. Oh yes, we are back and autumn is nearly here.
Yes.
You can feel it in the air. There's a crispness.
Definitely.
The trees are changing colour. And now, it's actually a requirement to cover yourself in knitting.
We're getting there, aren't we? I've been wearing my hat a few times.
Oh my goodness.
Knitted hat.
It is the way to keep warm. This,
I know.
I think, is knitting season, isn't it?
We're coming into it, definitely.
Yes. I mean...
Well, to be fair, I'll just knit any time. But
yeah, of course.
But I know what you mean, yeah. It's
Yeah.
that kind of, oh yes, I want to knit all of the cosy things.
Yeah, and the colours too.
Yeah.
It makes me think of... Because it's like the autumn colours. Like the hat I'm knitting at the moment. Yes, I am showing it today. The heartleaf birch hat.
Oh,
That's
yes.
exciting. That's very autumnal.
Very autumnal.
Also as well, though, I think that those blues... They're sort of autumnal in a way because it makes me think of the type of hats that you would wear in the autumn.
Oh, okay. I mean, it depends on the blue as to whether it's autumnal, because blue can be very summery, can't it? But navy blue, which is what I'm knitting with, that I think you could class it as an autumnal colour.
I mean, I think the thing is, whenever I think of autumn, I think of that Declan's hat that you knitted me in the stovepipe.
Oh, yeah. Stovepipe, Madeline Tosh.
Yes.
Well remembered.
I know.
Madeline Tosh. I've not knit with Madeline Tosh in years. Has anybody knit with Madeline Tosh recently? Didn't they get bought out or something?
Oh, no.
I've got a feeling that something happened with Madeline Tosh.
Right.
It's still called Madeline Tosh,
I
I
think
think.
so. Yeah.
But I'm not sure if she sold the business. Am I remembering that rightly? But anyway, yeah, I've not knit with Madeline Tosh for years.
What a show we have in store today. Because Kay is back with another Yarny book club. And when I say another, it's the last one.
Last one.
And that's exciting because that means that we get to finish the reading corner, Cal, but we also get to find out what the last book recommendation is.
Yes.
Which is very exciting
Very
indeed.
exciting.
But talking of exciting, Kay's only gone and released a pattern
Yes, indeed, I have.
since last time.
Yes.
You said you would.
I know.
And the frosted socks.
And I did. The frosted socks are now available to purchase.
So yes, oh my goodness, don't they look absolutely gorgeous?
Yes.
All sparkly. Love the candles. Can't beat a sock with a bit of candles.
I know. Sock with a bit of candles.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like I said, that pattern is available to purchase now on Ravelry and Lovecrafts. And thank you to everybody that's already gone and purchased them. I hope you're all enjoying knitting them up. I absolutely love this one. I'll show you a bit more about the sock in Endy Bits as well.
Thank you all so much for your lovely messages about the last episode. And also, I've had quite a few messages, should I say we've had quite a few messages, of people saying, oh no, I'm going to be so sad when England and Castle Nation finishes. Look, if we do our job right, you won't have anything to be sad about. And hopefully long-term viewers will know that hopefully we always sort of do our job right. If you think Walking the Wall, Rise and Fall of the Monasteries. So yes, look, whilst we are barrelling headfirst towards the end of England and Castle Nation, please fear not.
Do not.
We can say that with an added sort of zest, because Bakery Bear Productions are about to have its boundaries relaxed. Because we've always had certain boundaries, because we took the decision years ago to be very hands-on parents. And whilst we'll always be hands-on parents, our offspring may not be as close as she once was.
No.
Because, yes, in just a few days,
Yeah.
our daughter Bridie's heading off to university.
She is.
Yes, says it all.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of everything.
It is a mixture of everything. I have no idea what I'm feeling right now. No idea.
As Kay mentioned last time,
Ask me in 2 weeks.
she's been scribbling like crazy in her mum advice book.
I have.
We had lots of people saying what a wonderful idea they thought that was.
Yeah, I don't know if I've made a rod for my own back, though, because you start writing all these things down, don't you? And then something else, you think, oh, yeah, I'll tell her that. Oh, I'll write that down. I'll write that down. Yeah, I'm still writing in it, but, yeah, I've got to obviously finish it in the next couple of days. Well, I don't think it'll ever be finished. You know, I'm sure that whenever she comes home, I'll say, bring it back, and I'll add some other stuff to it.
Yeah. With the departure of our daughter Bryony, it does remove certain boundaries, and that's all we'll say right now. But, well, other than next year's series will be different.
Excitingly different.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
It's going to be fun. Now, speaking of fun, we have something extremely fun that is about to launch. Oh, yes.
Oh!
It began 2 years ago. Last year, it rose to new heights. And this year, I have a feeling it's going to be the best ever.
Yes.
It is, of course, Sockoween.
Sockoween. It's nearly October, so you know what that means. Yes, our Sockoween event is back. This year, join me as I knit through one of my favourite seasonal patterns. Okay everybody, we are ready now to cast on our fantastic incantation socks. And look, I've got my little pumpkin friend here. He's looking after my needles, which is adorable. So we are now at the point of starting the leg on our incantation socks. Okay, so here we go. I finished 6 repeats of the pattern for my little short leg, and it looks just lovely. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up these stitches along here. We're going to pick up an extra stitch here to close the gap. We're going to work across. Whether you're an experienced sock knitter or a total novice, I'll be with you every step of the way for a very special knitting. So join us from the 1st to the 31st of October for Sockoween 2024.
Did you see the animations?
Isn't it cute?
You need to look out for the
You've
animations.
excelled yourself.
Kay has.
Go back and watch it again if you didn't see it.
Well, those animations, they will be making appearances to a greater, sort of more impactful. Just look out for them. Look out for them throughout the series. It's going to be so
Really
much fun.
Really fun.
I mean, just Sockoween, it has. Do you know what? I never really got this time of the year, you know, the Halloween thing.
No, do you know, we've spoke about this before, haven't we? How it really, historically, in our sort of childhood and youth, it never really was a big thing.
But I do now.
Absolutely now. I'm really excited for it now because of Sockoween, you know, so
It's so funny.
Just brilliant.
It really is. I mean, there's all the things that are wrapped up into it that make it exciting because, of course, you know what, you've just seen, that's really fun putting something like that together, but also sock knitting. I mean...
Yeah, sock knitting and I love all the colours of Halloween.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. I love all of those purples and greens and oranges and blacks and all of that business.
Yeah.
I love all of the colours. So it's just been brilliant to be able to have that month and just spend it, you know, knitting all these fantastic socks. So I can't wait.
So, yes... The Sockoween Knit Along is open to all our patrons, but the video series that you've just seen the promo for, that's open to, it's free, not open. It's free to silver, gold, and platinum patrons.
Yes.
And that series includes a copy of the refreshed incantation socks.
Yes, which I'll be showing you those actually in what's off my needles.
Cool. Excitement abounds.
Absolutely.
And speaking of excitement abounds, what a show we have in store, because Kay has found me replacement yarn for my Albion.
Oh, yes.
And it's perfect.
We're much happier.
So we will be looking at that later on in the show. But also Kay has, as usual, some absolutely wonderful projects to share with you. So without further ado, I should say, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
So, talking of Sockoween, this pair of socks is kind of a pre-Sockoween, let's say. You know, I'm allowed.
We're going to have a new event now that happens. No, we can't. We can't. I can't cope.
No. This is just me getting too excited because I've got a new yarn. Do you know I showed you last time all those Halloween yarns from Polka Dot Creek that I got?
Yes.
And Bryony had chosen one that she wanted me to knit. And I thought, I'll knit her a pair before she goes to uni. Well, I won't be able to finish them, unfortunately, because we've been filming a lot of stuff for Sockoween and
hold on a minute.
Everything else going on.
You also decided to cast on complete in full and cast off something else.
I did.
For her to take to university.
Which I'll show you in what's off my needles. Yeah, I had a random cast on, which took me 3 days. So you sometimes have to do these things, don't you? But in any case, it works perfectly because these socks I'm going to keep hold of because it's Bryony's birthday in October. But I do want to finish them before the start of Sockoween because these are not part of Sockoween. Like I said, I'm cheating a bit and having a little pre-Sockoween party. So this pair of socks, I thought I'll try and choose a bag. I was already using my Halloween bag from Moo and Mouse for something else. So I chose this bag to put these in. And this is another one of my favourites. This one I got a few years ago from Alex Collins.
I knew it.
I love Alex Collins. I love Alex's bags. She designs and prints these fabrics herself and then makes the bags. And this is a little handled bag and it's got this fantastic moons and stars print on it. I love Alex's bags. They're really well made. These socks are being housed in here, and Bryony chose one of the Polka Dot Creek sets, as I said. Out of the how many did I get? I don't know. They're up there. 4 or 5 sets. I probably wouldn't have chosen this one immediately because it doesn't have as many colours in as the other ones. But actually, they're fantastic. And they're just so impactful, and I think that is because there's fewer colours. So I actually cast these on quite soon after the last show, but then I knit the leg and then they got set aside because I was doing all of the Sockoween stuff. And then I picked them back up just 2 days ago and I knitted from the heel to the toe, so I finished the sock in less than 24 hours. So I just wanted to get one sock finished and the other one on the go. So I thought, right, I'm just going to blitz it. But do you know what? I absolutely loved it. It didn't feel like a chore, It didn't feel like I was knitting super fast or anything like that. And I think it was the combination of the stripes and the pattern that just made it absolutely fly. So here's the first sock. Is this not fantastic? This colourway from Polka Dot Creek is Black Flame Candle. It's a Hocus Pocus reference, isn't it? And I just think they're amazing. And these are definitely going to be a favourite of Bryony's. So I've done my fairground pattern because that's Bryony's favourite. She just wants fairground socks all the time. So they're a really good fit. And she just loves them. So these will definitely be a favourite of hers. Isn't it just fantastic? So you've just got 3 colours in the stripes. So you've got 2 shades of orange and a black. And then the contrast colour is this fantastic deep purple. Can you see that? Gosh, but I was knitting this purple, the toe and the heel, and it was dark. I am not good these days with dark yarn and knitting.
Disaster.
And then I was Kitchener in the toe, and I've done that a billion times. There's very few stitches because this is my umbrella toe. So there's literally like a few stitches to Kitchener at the end. And something went wrong.
What did you do?
I don't know. Something went wrong.
I offered to
And
help, but she wouldn't.
Dan said, "Oh, can I help?" I said, "Oh, go away." I mean, it's very kind of him to offer to help, but there's no way he could have done it. I had to take my glasses off because I'm short-sighted. So up close, without my glasses on, I see really well. So I had to take my glasses off and I was like this, unpicking the end of the toe. And then I redid it, and it was all fine. It delayed me by about half an hour finishing the socks. I was so mad yesterday. I was like, ugh, I'd nearly finished. But anyway, the challenges of dark yarn and being in your 50s, that's all I'm saying, and being a bit short-sighted. So yeah, that's the first sock, and it's just fantastic. So I put in the fairground pattern, there's 2 heel choices. There's a standard heel flap and a turn, and I use a heel turn which minimises the disruption to the stripes. But there's an alternative heel, which is my butterfly heel, and it's this one, and it's a mock short row heel, and it's just fantastic. It fits me and Bryony really well, and I do get asked this question quite a lot, what's the fit like? And that's a really difficult question to answer because everybody's foot is different, isn't it? So I can't guarantee that you're going to get a good fit with it. But all I ever say to people is, everybody's feet is different, so I can't say for sure, but it fits me really well, it fits Bryony really well, and we've both got sort of thicker ankles and a higher instep, so take from that what you will, really. But I've never had anybody complain that it's a bad fit, and obviously this has been test knitted a few times, and I've never had any feedback to say that it isn't a good fit. So, and I do tend to think that there might be a little bit more space than on a traditional short row heel, but again, I've not tested that, so I don't know. So that's the first one, and the second one I just cast on last night watching Jack Bauer. And I've done the cuff and I've just started on the pattern. And surprisingly, so the sock sets from Polka Dot Creek, it's 70 grams altogether, so you get 50 grams of the self-striping and then a 20 gram mini. And I weighed what I'd got left after knitting one sock, and I used, I think, 8 grams of the mini for cuffs, heels and toes. I only knit 12 rounds on the cuff, so I'll have plenty for the second sock. But then I only used about 16 grams of the self-striping for this. Is that not bonkers? I mean, maybe it weighed a bit heavier than 50 grams. I didn't weigh it at the start. And I weighed this actual sock and it was just over 30 grams. I think it might have been like, I don't know, 31 grams or something. And usually socks for me or Bryony is about 60 grams, so that seems right. But what it does mean is I'll have maybe almost 20 grams of this left. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to try and make it work for a little pair of fingerless mitts? If I split it, so I've got like 10 grams of each, and used I'd have to find a different contrast colour because I will have used nearly all of that, and just made them as long as 10 grams would go if I did a longer cuff. I could make little matching mitts and she'd love that, I think, because they're so pretty, aren't they? Yeah, so I'm really, really loving it, and I actually really loved knitting through. So I'd like I said, I'd only knit to the bottom of the leg here. So one evening, night before last, I picked this up and I knit the heel and a couple of stripes. And then the next day, yesterday, I just knit all the way through this from about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I finished it, having breaks and, making lunch and all of that. I finished it around about 2 o'clock. So, I mean, that's pretty good, isn't it? It's amazing what you can do. If you set yourself to a task and you concentrate on that one task, this is the thing, don't get distracted. There's so many distractions in today's world, isn't there? It's just, I think it makes it so difficult to concentrate and to focus on the task in hand, whatever you're doing. because you just constantly get distracted, don't you? You know, if you're at work, you'll have a beep of an email, you'll have a phone ringing, you'll have somebody coming to talk to you. It's really difficult to concentrate. So if you can just zone out and concentrate on the task in hand, you can really get things achieved, I think. Anyway, Dan Jones.
Yes.
What's on your needles?
Well, you may recall my tale of angst and woe.
That was a new cast on.
Thank you very much. You may recall my tale of angst and woe from the last episode, which was the cast on of the Albion. And Kay got down to business very, very quickly, and she found the perfect replacement yarn.
Yes.
I had been using the Primrose Yarn Company forage.
No, that's not the word.
Okay. Borage.
No, what's the base called? It doesn't matter.
Storage? No.
Maybe it was forage.
I think it is forage.
Maybe it is forage.
Anyway, didn't like it at all. I mean, really, really didn't like it. So Kay decided Cascade 220 was the way to go.
Yeah.
So it arrived and it looks like this. And isn't it spectacular?
It's a fabulous colour.
This is the colour that I wanted from the start.
I believe the colourway was called Midnight Heather.
And it is literally exactly what was in my mind when I was thinking of a proper sort of fisherman's Gansey jumper. And so, you know, as soon as I saw it, I thought, yes, this is going to be perfect. And then, of course, you are nervous, shall we say, when you start knitting, just because the experience with the other yarn wasn't very pleasurable. Well, this is marvellous. Cascade 220 is just wonderful. And what I did was I did some research, and I saw a number of these which had been knitted with a 1x1 rib instead of a 2x2 rib.
Do you know, I said this to you. I thought I was going mad.
Sorry, I was so focused on the filming.
I said to him when we were filming the projects, I'm sure this was a 2x2 rib before, and you said no.
No, so I was just completely focused on the filming of the projects.
Okay.
So I found on Ravelry, but I also saw on Instagram, just when we were in the midst of it and we were like looking around and trying
People had done it as a 1x1 rib.
And it actually, I think, looks better. And the reason why it looks better is because the when you get into the body, the workings of it, it's all 1x1.
Oh, right.
So it sort of flows.
Right.
And I felt that the ones with
beautiful.
the two...
It looks beautiful, this.
The ones with the 2x2 rib, it looked a bit forced.
Yeah.
It didn't look quite... You know how you always do ribs that flow into the pattern? Well, the 1x1 seemed to flow so much more.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to do a 1x1. And also that's going to wash away the sort of bad taste of, you know, that initial...
It can be quite difficult to get a neat 2x2 rib. Try 1x1. It always looks neater, I think. Because the issue with a 2x2 is that second knit stitch, I always find.
Yeah. I mean, I've done both.
This looks absolutely beautiful. It's like chalk and cheese compared to the other one.
Well, it's the yarn. It's definitely the yarn. I mean, the other thing I did was...
The yarn's lovely, you know. Cascade 220, the non-superwash. It's fantastic.
I went and looked at the other jumpers that I've knitted, and I looked at the ones with the 2x2, and I looked at the ones with a 1x1, and I just prefer the feel in the wearing of the 1x1.
I also think a 1x1 fits in more with the pattern of it being slightly Gansey.
Yeah.
I think 1x1 is more of a traditional...
hard-wearing...
Well, no, the look of it, I think it just looks more like a Gansey than 2x2 would. I don't know. I mean, I'll have to look up a few traditional Gansey patterns.
Yeah.
I feel like they would use 1x1 rather than 2x2.
Well, you know, it just felt like... It felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And as well... I should have really done this before. I should have looked at the other jumpers that I've knitted. I should have also thought about which ones do I enjoy wearing the most. And that's what I did now with this second cast on, and that's why I've gone 1x1, and it's great. It's absolutely brilliant.
So this is I think you're using...
And then I'm moving up.
3.5 and 4. It's quite a tight gauge, I think. We're using the needles from the pattern. This is 3.5mm, is that right?
Well, I'm using
whatever it said.
I'm using whatever it said. I think we
we did, because we swatched, and it was the same needle sizes, which I think is 3.5mm and 4mm for the main body. But yeah, I mean, I really love 1x1 rib, and just thinking back to my mum knitting when I was young, I'm pretty sure she always did a 1x1 rib on jumpers. I'm pretty sure she did.
It feels
I find more traditional to me. More grippy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to sit where you put it more.
Yes.
Whereas a 2x2 will perhaps be, if you want
think
more
you're
of a slouchy,
possibly
more of a
right.
thing that moves around a bit. I just
Yeah.
find when I wear the one with the 1x1s, it sits where I put it. And that's just how I like my clothes now. So
Yeah, but
enjoying
all-
this, loving
All
it.
good. All good.
And I can say absolutely that I'm not having any problems
No.
in seeing the stitches.
Oh, right, okay. Because it's a dark yarn, isn't it? But your needles are metal, so...
Yeah, it'd be a nightmare, you imagine.
Oh, that would be horrendous.
Wooden needles.
Using those dark wooden
Oh,
needles
no.
with a dark yarn.
I'd have stitches all over the shop.
Not even going there.
No.
Yeah, thank goodness
Yes.
for metal needles.
Well, I'm suddenly feeling all festive.
Yes, I know. Because my next project...
Is it a Christmas project?
It's a Christmas gift, so
Oh, of course it
therefore
is.
it's in one of my Christmas Moo and Mouse bags.
For very special
many.
people, this
The needle size, yes.
is wonderful.
Yes, so can you remember last time my dilemma with... I was making hats, wasn't I, for these two lovely friends that were going to meet in December. And I didn't like the way that the yarn was knitting up. Can you remember I was using Malabrigo Rios? I don't think it was necessarily the yarn. I think I was doing a bank head, wasn't I? And that's right, I just couldn't get the sizing to be quite right somehow. I think in hindsight it probably would have been all right. But anyway, what I decided to do was dye up 2 skeins of yarn. I showed them to you, didn't I? And knit my angel hat, because I've knit that before and I know the sizing of it and I know the yarn and all of that business. So I felt more confident doing that for people that I didn't know. I think that was my dilemma, you know. I didn't know them, I didn't know how big their heads were and all of that. I guess I'm overthinking this, which wouldn't, you know, it's not surprising, is it, for me? So yes, I've cast one of these on, and actually I'm not far off finished the first hat. So I've started off, I did a navy blue and I did a more kind of brilliant blue. This was the navy blue that I dyed up, and I dyed it on an Aran weight base, and I had a look actually at my original angel hat, and it is the same base, I'm certain. It's a 2-ply Aran weight, 100% superwash merino, and I think I dyed this myself, so there's no ball band, but I think it was... Oh, hang on. I can tell you in the pattern. It is 166 metres for 100 grams. So it's a nice Aran weight, but this pattern will also knit with a worsted weight yarn. So the angel hat is a free pattern by me. You can go and download it free of charge on Ravelry or Lovecrafts. And this is where I'm up to.
It looks great. The yarn's
Yeah,
bloody
I think
marvellous.
I'm really, really happy with it, I've got to say. Really, really happy with it. And I think it's long enough now. What I don't want to do, because I don't see them as being people who wear slouchy hats. I think it'll be a beanie, you know. So I don't want to knit this too long. So in the pattern, it's obviously a free pattern. And what did I tell you to knit to? I think 3 inches for the ribbing, which is quite a long rib. So I didn't do it that long. I think I might have done like 2.5 inches for this one, and then went into the pattern. And then I say to knit to 7 inches. And I think that, I seem to remember that gives, on my head, it gives just a little bit of, not slouch, but there's just a bit of fabric back here. And I know when I've put it on Dan's head, it's completely just goes over his head, but he just have a bigger head. So what I decided to do, I think this is now at about 6 3/4. So that seems about right to me. So I'm going to start the decreases. I think what I might do is just put this on my head and just see where it's up to, just to be absolutely sure. It's so difficult, isn't it, when you're making something for someone you don't know and just hoping that it fits all right. I'm sure it'll be fine, and I'm sure I'm overthinking it. But I am going to make them both exactly the same. So I've noted down, how many rounds I did for the rib and then how many repeats I've done in the body. So it's just this really nice textured pattern, and I think it looks brilliant. It's very unisex. This size of a hat, I think, is very accommodating. I'm talking about this sizing thing, aren't I? But I know it is very accommodating because this fits me, it fits Bryony, it will go on Dan's head as well. So it fits a wide range of sizes. And I love the fact that I've dyed the yarn. I think it looks lovely, doesn't it? I'm really pleased with this colour. And the other one is here, look. So this is the other blue. Oh, isn't that pretty? So look, you can see the difference. But aren't they going to be nice together? And I think I'll just wrap them up together and say it's a joint present, because I can't remember who likes the navy and who likes the brighter blue.
I'd be able to tell you, but just
it doesn't matter. I'll just wrap them up together, and they can hopefully pop them on their heads and go, that'll be perfect for when we're boating, and that'll be lovely, won't it? So yeah, and a really enjoyable project. This has been my bedtime knitting until I got to this point. So I will just whiz through the decreases. There's not many rounds, I don't think, on the decreases. How many did I do? Oh, 14 rounds. So it produces sort of a nice little gather. I don't like hats that have, like, you spend a long time decreasing and you get this sort of like pixie thing going on. I've seen quite a few hats like that recently, and it's been done as a design feature. So that, you put it on your head, but then you have this extra bit up here that sort of sticks up. I don't know what to think about that. I've seen it loads. And I'm like, is it meant to be like that? I think I'm just being old, aren't I? Am I just being old-fashioned? I could not walk out of the house if my hat looked like that on my head.
Neither.
But maybe you could if you were in New York.
Well, I couldn't.
I don't know, maybe you could.
Well, I wouldn't.
Maybe it'd be like a fashion thing. I've been watching...
That doesn't mean it looks good.
No. I've been watching recently Emily in Paris. Has anybody seen this, right? On Netflix. I've had to stop watching it a couple of times because the clothes that this woman wears, I've never seen clothes more ridiculous in my life, right? I've been watching it. It's really... it's okay to watch, it's entertaining enough, but the clothes she wears are just bonkers. And what always gets me, right, is you never see her in the same outfit twice, yet she lives in this tiny little apartment in Paris where there's apparently no room for anything at all, really. She shares it with a friend and they have to share the bed, there's no room. Yet every single day she wears these outfits and they're like, bizarre things with wings, and it's bonkers. So a couple of times I'm just like, I can't watch this, it's too stupid. And I've turned it off. But then I've started watching it again because I just think, oh, well, it's silly, isn't it? I'll just watch it. It's good fun. But yeah, hat nearly finished. So next time I'm hoping I'll have this one finished and this beautiful blue will be on the needles.
It's gorgeous, that one.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that one.
I know.
Wow.
I started with this one because I was more excited about this one. So I thought, it'll make me knit this one quicker to get to this beautiful blue. I'm
also knitting a hat. It's the Heartleaf Birch hat.
Oh, so you are.
If you want to... So what yarn is this, Kay, again?
That's Malabrigo Rios.
So the Heartleaf Birch hat is really great. I'm really, really enjoying doing the cables. I was sort of thinking, it's just going to be like a Declan's hat. But it isn't. The cables are so much more involved and there's so much more going on with the cables. And that's made it stretching for me.
It's beautiful.
Because
it's really beautiful.
I've not knitted a massive amount of cables recently. I did in the past, have done in the past, because I've done the Samantha and I also did the Irish coffee. And so I'm really glad to be doing this again. It's been a surprise in the sense of it was so mentally engaging, trying to just knit through. Once I've done one repeat, the second repeat now, I'm starting to remember because that's like frustration. It's totally fine. It's a free pants, so there's no complaints at all. I have to have 2 pages out because one page has got the chart on it and the other page has got the description to tell you what the chart thing means.
Yeah, the key.
And there's bits in the key which I haven't seen before. But now I've got through one repeat, I'm now remembering. And I'm also finding myself being able to read what's going on anyway, which is really cool. So I sort of know what to expect.
But it would have taken 3 seconds just to put the key on both pages.
Yeah,
I know from writing patterns. All you've got to do is literally click it onto that page and to that page. and then you wouldn't have had that problem. Because whenever I do charts, I always, if I like repeat the chart, sometimes I'll put it in 2 places, and I'll always put the key next to it on both things.
Now, there is a page where the key and the chart is on the same page,
right?
But the chart and the key are so small on that page that I have to hold it further closer up to my face and I don't have a problem with my eyes, so you know it's slightly frustrating in that sense, but it's totally fine. It's a free pattern. It's perfectly readable, so I'm not complaining. It's a minor thing, and now through into this second repeat, and everything is moving along nicely.
Talking of 2x2 rib, your 2x2 rib is fantastic. When you compare it to the 2x2 from last week that we were talking about, look at his 2x2 rib on here.
Now,
isn't it? It's just lovely, isn't it?
I do appreciate the comments that people made about that yarn and saying, "Oh, you know, persevere." And it's really lovely when you've. I think a lot of people were saying once you've knitted it up and it's been washed, it's really lovely. The thing is, though, for me, the primary thing about knitting is the enjoyment of the knitting.
Yes.
And I don't want to knit a project where the knitting is rubbish and the wearing is lovely. I want to knit a project because it's amply possible. Isn't it? Of course it is. We know it's possible always, because, you know, think about all the different types of projects. I've never encountered this problem before, where the yarn was so horrendously rubbish to work with that it was just not enjoyable. So even if it felt like the most beautiful, silky, gorgeous thing and it looked amazing and everyone I ever met said, "You look amazing," I still would have seen it as a failure, because the bit which is important to me, which is the relaxation which comes from the knitting, would not have existed. So I'm confident and happy in my decision to stop.
I agree with you. And again, everyone's different, and some people will combat that because they know that the finished thing is lovely. But I'm the same as Dan, you know. If I don't engage with the yarn, then I'm kind of done, really, and I'll
knit solely for the relaxation. That's what it is. If something comes out of it lovely at the end, that's great. But I'll knit something, and even if it never gets worn, I'm happy.
Yes,
because
me too.
I've gone through the thing that I wanted to go through, which is the process of knitting it.
I'm a bit of both. I wouldn't say I'm a process knitter. I wouldn't say I'm a product knitter. I would say I'm a combination of both.
Me too.
You know,
definitely.
If I know somebody wants something, I will knit it, probably enjoy the process, but I'm not doing it for the process, I'm doing it for the finished thing. But conversely, if I've got a beautiful yarn, I'm knitting it for the yarn. So I would say I'm both, really.
Yeah, I suppose the difference is I would never knit something for someone for the sake of knitting it.
Oh, right. See, I do that all the time.
I would always knit something for someone that worked for me and for them. So call me... I don't think that's being selfish.
No, that's not being selfish.
That's just understanding the type of person you are.
I don't believe in this selfish knitter phrase anyway, you know.
It's way more fun.
You should knit whatever you want to knit for whatever reason you want to knit.
Absolutely. But also, it's like the most fun ever knitting something for someone else.
I agree.
Because it's like the look, when you nail it, you know, you get it right, it fits perfectly, everything's lovely, the colour's perfect, the look on that person's face. But then the appreciation that they're going to have for you for potentially years.
Yes.
It's like,
I absolutely
it's the most rewarding thing ever.
I absolutely agree. I would say I mainly knit for other people, because if you think about it, you know, I knit socks for Dan, I knit socks for Bryony, I knit cowls and hats and mitts and everything else that I knit for Bryony, and sort of hats and things for Dan as well. But then when I'm designing a pattern, I'm effectively knitting that for someone else, because I'm knitting it for you, because then you will enjoy the pattern. You know, designing for me is an extension of the way that I love to knit, because I love to knit for other people, and that's just what I see my designing as. So
what else is on your needles?
What's in this bag is a new cast on.
Woo.
So in this lovely, another Moo and Mouse bag. I'm not sponsored by Moo and Mouse. I'm not sponsored by Emma. I will just say that. I just love her bags.
Well, now we have to go further. We're not sponsored by anybody.
We're not sponsored by anyone.
And we never would be.
We don't.
Just to be clear.
We don't do that. You all know we don't do that.
Well, for any new viewer, if you mention sponsorship, we have to be absolutely clear that, we buy everything
We do.
that we use. We only review things that we've bought. And the reason why we do that is we want to support the industry, but also we want to be able to be honest.
Yes.
Yes. And that's why you're not sponsored by
No,
Bits.
I just love her bags. And in this one, she usually puts actually a little lavender sachet, and this one's got like foxes as part of the pattern. And look at this sweet fox in the lavender bag. Isn't that just lovely? And I just leave them in the bags that they came with, and it just scents whatever I'm making. So this next cast on is seasonal. It's relevant to me and Dan, and I think I can't remember if I spoke about this yarn, but Vesper, it's Knitterly Things. Knitterly Things produced a yarn recently, and it's Detroit Lions themed, self-striping yarn, right? And one of our patrons posted a picture in our Facebook group that she'd just got some, and I was all over it. I was like, right, I've got to get some of this. But unfortunately, when I went onto the website, I went to buy it, put it in my cart, blah, 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 doesn't ship to the UK. So I mentioned this on one of our pop shows, I think. And then very kindly, a couple of our patrons said they would help me out to get me some. So that's really kind. I've got some more on the way, actually, but one of the deliveries has already arrived and I've cast on, and I have got some more on the way. So I'll have plenty to make us a pair of socks each and possibly mitts. Maybe even a cool hat. That'd be good. But yeah, it's Vesper sock yarn, and it's the thick sock that I've got. And the colourway name is Grit. Anybody who's a Detroit Lions fan will know why this is called Grit. So this yarn is interesting, actually. I've never knit with a base like this. So it's called Thick Sock. It's 75.25, but you get 400 yards for 100 grams, which I think is about 360, 370 metres, something like that. So it's not as plump as the yarn that I've been knitting with recently, where it's more sort of towards a sport weight. It's not as plump as that. It's sort of in between a normal fingering weight and going slightly towards the sport, but it's not sport. So it's a really interesting yarn. So this is it in the cake. So it's self-striping in the Detroit Lions colours. So we've got that blue, the famous blue. Oh, what's it called?
Honolulu blue.
So Honolulu blue. We've got grey, we've got black, and then natural. Now, it's interesting. This blue, we noticed recently, we were watching the Lions, and the blue seems to have changed, I think, over recent years. It's now more of a brilliant blue, I think, rather than...
Although when we compared it directly, it's not as glaring as we thought.
No.
The difference is they've changed the colour of the numbers to white,
They
which
have.
makes the blue seem more brilliant.
It does, but
with the contrast.
We did, like, some of our T-shirts and things that we've got for the Lions, it is more of this turquoisey colour, although this is very turquoise. But yeah, the blue has definitely changed over the years. And if you look, for example, at where this is very very in depth, but on things where Lions is written, I think the background's in blue, isn't it? And that seems to be, or when you're looking at the score on the screen, the colour that they use for the Lions is not the same blue as the blue they wear now. So yeah, we've had a whole big conversation about has Honolulu blue changed? But anyway, in any case, this is the lovely yarn. Now, I've got two bits of knitting to show you, because what I did originally, because this was slightly thicker, and on the ball band it says recommends needle sizes 1 to 3, US 1 to 3, I thought, well, I'll give it a go with the 2.75mm again. And I'll go down a stitch number. These are for Dan, but I'll go down a stitch number thinking that would work because it's been working for other socks for me, with the thicker yarn. So I knit this. I'm doing a 2x2 rib, fully ribbed sock, everybody. This is how much we love the Lions, and clearly this is how much I love my husband, that I'm doing a fully ribbed sock. But I started with this this one, you can see this is not on the needles anymore. Isn't it lovely how it knits up? So this is 64 stitches using a 2.75mm needle and 2x2 rib. And at first I thought it would fit. You see it stretches out, lovely. I put this bit on Dan's foot and it wouldn't go over his instep. So I thought, right, okay, can't do that. So I didn't rip this out deliberately. I just threaded the end of the yarn through the stitches. So the stitches are still live here because I think this would make great mitts. Look, you know, if I carried on knitting for a bit, look, oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? Isn't that just amazing? So I think what I will do is put this back on the needles, stick it back on a 2.75mm and just carry on knitting for a bit longer, and I'll have a fantastic little mitt, won't I? There's no thumb thingy or anything. It's just like a wristy thingy, isn't it? But isn't it just fantastic? So that's why I left that, why I didn't rip that out, because I've got plenty of yarn, so it's all good. So then I recast on using 2.5mm and 72 stitches, and this is all fine. And I'm back to the point of nearly finishing the leg. So here we go. So this is 72 stitches, 2x2 rib, fully ribbed, everybody. And you know what? It's all right. I thought you're going to hate this, but I don't. And what it's given me is the opportunity to really practice my 2x2 ribbing. And I think it's looking really cool. I think it's looking really neat. The problem I can get sometimes if I don't pay attention when I'm knitting 2x2 is that my second knit stitch can be a bit gappy and it just makes the whole thing look really untidy. But if I pay attention and I'm aware of what I'm doing, because what you need to do to neaten up your 2x2 rib is after that knit stitch, so you've knit 2, before you do the purl, when you bring the yarn to the front, give it a tug, because then that's going to minimise the amount of yarn between the knit and the purl. And it's that transition from a knit to a purl, or certainly what I find, that gives you that gappiness, because there's more yarn got to travel from a knit to a purl than a purl to a knit. When it's a purl to a knit, it's not a problem I ever find. It's the other way, it's when it's a knit to a purl. And if you are aware of it and you just start giving that yarn a little tug before you purl that first stitch, it looks so much neater. So if I spread it out for you a bit, you'll be able to see just how lovely and neat the rib is. Can you see? Isn't it lovely? Now, I haven't done anything with regards to the little blip of colour you get when you change during the stripes. You know, when you do your ribbing, you can see you get a little blip of colour. I don't do anything about that. I've seen a lot of people, when they're knitting a 2x2 ribbed or 1x1 ribbed or whatever stripy sock like this, when you get the colour change, they will just knit a plain round so that you don't get the blips. However, I've tried that and I didn't like it. And I didn't like it for a couple of reasons. One is that you can, well, only really one reason. You can tell in the fabric that you've done that knit row, because it's not, you know, that knit row is not as sucky in, obviously, as the other rows. So you can tell, you get like a little noticeable, I think it's noticeable, difference in your gauge every time you do that. And also it means on the inside of your sock, you get a purl round. So I think in terms of comfort, you probably wouldn't be able to feel it, but I don't know. I think it's more for me that I don't like the way it looks on the front. I think you can tell in the fabric. And in all honesty, I quite like seeing the transitions. I like that little blip thing. I think it adds a little sort of design feature, if you like. I quite like it. So I don't do it for those two reasons, but obviously you do whatever you want to do. So yeah, I've done just over 50 rounds, 55 rounds now on this. Now normally I would do, let's think, I do 15 rounds for a rib normally, and then usually maybe 40 rounds or 45 for Dan. So actually, I'm probably only about 5 rounds off being finished with the leg. It's hard to tell, isn't it, when you're just doing a fully ribbed sock? But I reckon I'm about 5 rounds off. And then I'll just go into the heel. Now, what do I do about the heel is the whole thing. I'm going to do a standard heel flap and gusset. But because this base is so particular, I can't really match it to use it for the heel, to use a contrast colour heel. So I think all I'm going to do is I'll pull from the middle, and I think I'll just do the heel flap and turn from the middle. So yeah, very enjoyable project, and thank you to our 2 lovely patrons who helped me get this yarn. And full disclosure, because we always talk about, buying yarn and all of that, I wanted to pay for this yarn. The people involved wanted to send it to me as a gift, so what I have done is the lady who sent me this one, I have dyed up some yarn for her and sent it to her, and she's got that. And I'm going to do the same for the other lady, because it just, as you know, things like that, I just find it uncomfortable, and I really want to repay that kindness. So that's what I've done.
Right, it's time to say goodbye to an old friend. In January, not actually, in January this year, Kay started her Yarny Book Club series. Yes. In every episode, she was sharing one of her favourite books and then dyeing up a skein of yarn inspired by it. And through this year, that series has run, and now we've come to the final episode. Along the way, she's also been knitting the Reading Corner cowl. And so the question is, of course, what book has inspired the final colourway? Today we find out in the last episode of the Yarny Book Club.
I love reading books and adore dyeing yarn, so I thought in this series it would be wonderful to combine them. So, over the next 6 episodes, join me as I share with you some of my favourite books, and we create colourways inspired by them. Along the way, I hope you find some inspiration for some great reads, and we also discover some fantastic new colourways. Welcome to the Yarny Book Club. Welcome back, everybody, to the Yarny Book Club. And guess what? It's the final one today. Can you believe it? It's the final book. It's the final colourways. Because I'm going to do 2 today as a final kind of little treat. We're going to do 2 colourways. So yeah, it's the final book, and I'm so excited. I've sort of deliberately kept this book for the final one because it's a book that I only read actually sort of last December, January, and I absolutely loved it. And it was a book that I'd been aware of actually for years because the author is one of my favourite authors. So I was very aware of this book, and I can't really think what stopped me from reading it, to be honest. But I just decided to give it a go, and actually I listened to it, as I do most books these days, on Audible. The audiobook was like 40 hours. I mean, that sounds huge, doesn't it? I mean, my average audiobook length is somewhere between sort of 10 and maybe 15 hours. I know Winter Solstice is about 20 hours, I think. So 40 hours is an incredibly long audiobook. But like I say, I didn't want it to end, and I was really sad when it did end. So I need to tell you, don't I, what the book is. It's Coming Home by Rosamund Pilcher. Now, I think you all know that I love Rosamund Pilcher, and in particular, my favourite book, and one of my absolute favourite books of all time, I would say, is Winter Solstice. And it is 1,016 pages. Don't be daunted by that. It didn't even feel that long of a book because I listened to it so quickly. And I think when you listen to books, you can get through them quicker, can't you? So yeah, this book
it really is an epic saga. It's the time period. It runs from 1935 is when it starts, and then it goes all the way through the war years, and then to post-war a little bit. So it's a good, so what will that be? It's more than 10 years that it covers, that, you know, that span is definitely quite a bit more than 10 years. And it tells the story, the main character is a lady called Judith Dunbar, and in 1935 she's a young, fairly young girl. I think she's probably around 13, 14, something like that. And that's where it starts off in 1935, and then it sort of follows her life all the way through to her being an adult. I'll go into a bit more detail when we sit down and have a chat about this book. It's based mainly I would say in Cornwall. That's where this big house here on the front is, and then also quite a lot in London, and then it does also go abroad as well, and I love the sections that are set in another country, and I'll tell you a bit about those when we sit down. So the colourway today is actually based on, and I've made a little mark of it here, it's only this far into the book, it's on this page here. And it's inspired, when I was listening to it, in particular when I was listening to it, it really just brought an image to my mind. And when I was thinking about the book and designing a colourway based on it, that's the image I had in my mind. So when I got the hard copy of it, I quickly found that section in it. And it's based on a part of the book where Judith, still as a young girl, she befriends this other girl at boarding school, and she goes home with that girl to this big house for, I don't know if it was Easter or what it was, but for some school holiday. And the family really kind of take her in and you know, take her under their wing, and they kind of allocate a bedroom to her in this great big house. And it's her description of what that bedroom looked like when she walked into it. Basically what she says is that the colour of the walls was somewhere, it weren't quite pink, weren't quite peach. They had a golden light that came in from the window, and there was a mention of the sea as well, because that's just literally out of the window. So the colours that came into my head were, you know, pinks, peaches, the golden light, and then an element of the sea. So it's all those sort of beachy colours, isn't it? The blue and the gold. But then that sort of not quite pink, not quite peach thing really appealed to me, because that's kind of one of my favourite colours. If you've got this hard copy book, if you go to page 135, you can read the exact paragraph, and it's beautifully written actually. So that's my inspiration. It's a beautiful colourway. It's a very kind of dreamy and quite a delicate colourway, I would say. But also you can see all of the colours within there, and the colours mingle, and it's really, really pretty. And then I'm also going to do a coordinating tonal. And the tonal is a combination of two of the colours that I'm going to use for the main skein. Here is everything that I'm going to need every time I dye up some yarn. So I'll start from kind of this side and work over this way. So first of all, over here I've got my pans that I dye in, my pots. I always dye in pots. I don't dye in those flat sort of tray things. I always dye in the pots, and these are stainless steel pots, and it's sort of like a casserole pot. I like the ones that have got two handles because they're nice and easy to lift around. All of your equipment that you use for dyeing your yarn, you should only use for dyeing yarn. So pack it in a box, keep it somewhere separate, and that's your dyeing equipment. So yeah, we've got our two pots. We've got our mordant, which for me is citric acid, because it's a dried product. It's actually a food product. It's what makes sweets that sort of fizzy, sour fizziness. So it's really easy to store. It's really nice and cheap to buy. I think this big tub was like £10 or something from Amazon. I've got a little plastic measuring cup, because sometimes we will need that. And then here I've got some paintbrushes and I've got my measuring spoon. So the paintbrushes are for speckling, and the measuring spoon is when we are either measuring dye directly into the water, or sometimes I also sprinkle the dye on with this. And this is a 1/8 of a teaspoon measure. We've got my mask, of course, always wear a mask when we are dyeing yarn. I've got my design book with all my notes in, of course. My big mixing spoon, couldn't do my dyeing without my big mixing spoon. I've got some old tea towels. I've got a piece of oilcloth here. And these are just to protect the work surface because I'm dyeing in the kitchen. And then I've got 2 pairs of gloves. I've got a heavy duty pair for when the water's hot. And then I've just got one of these sort of surgical pairs, I suppose they are, because I don't like wearing thick, heavy gloves most of the time. So these are really great. So these are the kind of things that are specific to this particular colourway. So we've got here, first of all, in my bowl, I've got 2 skeins of yarn soaking away. It's the same fingering weight yarn that I've used through the whole of this series. So it's an 85-15, so 85% superwash merino and 15 nylon. And I've got 2 skeins, 400 metres each. So I'm going to do 1 skein of each of the colours, 1 of the pretty sort of variegated, and then 1 for the tonal. So that's been soaking away for a little while in some warm water with a scoop of citric acid. And then we've got our dyes. So I'm going to use 5 dyes for this colourway, and well, for both of them, because we're just going to use 2 for the tonal. So what have I got? I've got all of the different types of dyes that I use. Had to do that, didn't we, for the last show? So I'll tell you the colourways as always, and then I'll sort of describe the type of colourway so you can substitute if you want to. So the first one is a landscape dye, and it's Heath. Now Heath is the most beautiful pink. It's a very dusky pink, leans sort of, you know, sometimes if you speckle it, which we're not really going to speckle it today, but it leans more sort of slightly peachy, but that kind of dusky pink. We've then got a straightforward pink, so it's jacquard pink, which is number 608, and this is just that sort of typical kind of ballerina pink, little girl pink, that sort of shade. We've then got a Dharma dye, and this one is peach blush, and that's 441. So that is just as it's described. It's a really lovely peach shade. We've then got, we've then got one of my favourite blues. I've used this before and I spoke about it before, but we've got another Dharma colour, and it's Delphinium blue. This is 482, but I don't know if that's the same colour as it, the same number as it is now, because I've had this ages, and I know that I think for a while they didn't do this shade, but I think they do again now. But Delphinium blue is a very, it's such a beautiful blue. There's a lot of pink in it. So it's a very pink leaning blue. And then the final colour, can you all guess what the final colour is that I'm going to use? It's jacquard gold ochre, which is 636. We couldn't have a final show, could we, without using gold ochre. So that's our 5 colours. Our yarn is all soaked and ready. I've got my dye book with my recipe in. So it's time now to start dyeing up that beautiful variegated yarn inspired by Coming Home. Okay, so in my pot here, it's about 1/3 full, I would say, with water, and I've got another scoop of citric acid, and that's just heating up nicely. So I'm going to put my skein of yarn into the pot. So I'll just grab it, squidge it, give it a shake just to release all those strands, and then into the pot and just move it around. I just want to make sure that I've got as much of the yarn on the surface of the water there. So we're actually going to use 2 techniques today to dye this yarn. We're going to sort of sprinkle on the dye, but then we're also going to make up a liquid dye for some of the colourways as well. So it's a really lovely combination of techniques. First of all, I'm going to make sure that's coming up nicely to a temperature. That's quite hot now. So that'll be fine. So I'm going to pop on my mask, and the first colour that we're going to lay down on the yarn is the jacquard pink. Okay, so I've got my little measuring teaspoon, this one that I've always used, and it's 1/8 of a teaspoon. So I'm going to take my pink, and I need about 1/2 of 1/8. So get your spoon about half full. And then I'm just going to tap it all over the surface of the yarn. So just go in quite freely, moving around in a sort of swirl. And then when it's all off, I'm going to just use my spoon just to push. Not really sort of vigorously. I'm just tapping my spoon over the surface, because I don't really want speckles as such. What I want is some nice kind of ribbons of soft colour. So I'm just doing that until I can see all of the dye particles have sort of disappeared. Doesn't matter, I mean, you're going to inevitably get a little bit of speckling, that's fine. There we go, that's absolutely what I want. So now I'm just going to leave that for a couple of minutes. Won't take very long at all, just to absorb that first amount of colour. There's not a huge amount of dye. This actually is quite a subtle colourway in the end. Okay, so that's had just a couple of minutes, and that'll be set now. If you ever want to check, you can just get your big spoon and just have a little sort of poke around and just check. So we're just going to lift that up, and you can see the sort of pink that is now. It's just that very pretty little, I always think of it as sort of a little girl pink. Okay, so we're now going to move, oh that's hot now in there, I'm going to turn my temperature down a little bit. So just move it around, and I sort of flip the skein as well. And we're just going to lay that back in. Trying to get the most white yarn, I suppose, up to the surface. That's absolutely fine. And then we're going to do the same thing again, because we want to get this lovely pink colour all the way through the skein. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I've got about 1/2 of 1/8 again, and I'm going to find those white areas. So I'm just going to give that literally a minute, because we're actually not going to move it now for the next colour. We're going to leave it as it is there. We're going to get our next colour of dye, which is going to be the landscape heath. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing as we just did for the pink, but we're going to go in the gaps. So with this one, I'm actually going to do 1/8, a full 1/8 of my spoon. Now I find that landscape dyes behave differently to jacquard, and what happens is they're a different sort of consistency. Landscape dyes tend to be a bit more granular, and as such what tends to happen, I mean, they're brilliant for speckling. I've said this I think before. You get fantastic speckles, so even though I pushed that straight away, it does still speckle. Can you see here? But isn't that beautiful? So we get two different things going on here. We've got this gorgeous pink, more kind of watercolory, but then the one we've just put on, the heath, does want to speckle more. So you will get speckles, and you will get a bit more of an intense colour. Right, so we're going to move, and then lay that down. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to grab a full spoonful and over the surface. So that's our pinks all done. So I'm starting off with the peach blush. All I'm going to use is about 1/4 of 1/8. Just about that, just about 1/4. Okay, into there. And then I'm going to make up about 300 mils into a liquid solution. And if you use warm water when you do this, the dyes will dissolve much easier. Don't try and do it with cold water, it'll just take forever to actually get them to dissolve. So 300 mils of warm water. There we go. You can see we've got this lovely peach shade. So give it a good old stir. And yeah, that looks about right, because you can lift it up in your spoon and you can see it's really delicate shade of peach here. And that's just what we want. We don't want anything really strong, because the description in the book is that all of these were sort of really delicate colours. So before I pour that in, I'm just going to give it a little move around. Doesn't it look lovely already? It's so pretty. There we go, that's absolutely fine. And what I'm going to do now is pour about half of this over. I'm just going to pour it kind of where I feel I want to see the peach. So I am going to put it on some of these pinker, the deeper pinker areas, because putting that on top intensifies it, I find. But then I'm going to add it over here. You can see now this bit here is turning a more peach. So I'm going to add a bit over there, a bit over here. It's very subtle, and that is about half. Put a bit there. And then I'm just going to get my big spoon and just give that a little push down. So I'm actually going to move this straight away. I don't mind if there's a bit of that peach in the water. There's so little dye in there that it doesn't do any harm. And I quite want all these colours to mingle and be really pretty. Actually, there's a very little dye in there, so that's good. So just give it a little shufty around and then back in. And then the remainder of this peach, I'm going to do the same thing. Just pour that over, choose a few areas. So that's our peaching. So now I'm going to do the blue. So the blue, now we don't want this to overpower anything. So we need to be careful with the blue, because what we want is just little hints of blue, because it's like you're seeing that little hint of the sea out of the window. So we just want a little hint of that. So I'm going to take my blue and we're just going to take a tiny bit. I mean, it's hard for me to say how much it is. Just a little bit into there. And then I'll make this up. It's actually about 250 mils there. Isn't this just the prettiest blue? Can you see in the spoon? Oh, I just love this blue. So a quick just move. Because by moving it around like that, anything that's left in there will be absorbed. So we're just going to lift it, and as we lift it, can you see here where we've got the pink and the blue? It's really pretty. And down here, look, little hints of the blue. Make sure that you're kind of hiding that previous blue. So I'm just going to finish off this liquid solution. I'm going to put some over here, a bit over here. More at the top there, and that'll be perfect. Now the final colour, and this is what sort of transforms this skein, I feel. Well, you know, it's gold ochre, you know what I'm like. So I'm just going to use, I'm not using a lot though, we just want it to enhance. So I'm going to use about 1/4 of an eighth. And let's see what colour what strength that gives. And I'll go up to 300 mils again. Now we might not use all of this because, like I say, I really don't want this to turn into a yellow skein of yarn. That looks about right, that shade. So what we're going to do with the gold, same thing, I'm going to pour it over. I'm not going to pour it over all of it though, I'm just going to choose some areas. And I am going to put it over some of the blue, because when this gold hits the blue, that's what turns it into that eau de Nil, and it's those two colours we're going to use for the tonal to match. That combination of the delphinium blue and the gold ochre just makes it it's the prettiest colour. So I'm going to put it over some of that blue, and then also if you lay down gold ochre on the top of pink, it makes that really beautiful peach. So we're just going to, play it by eye, so to speak, and I'm just going to pop some over here where that blue was, and then over here maybe on some pink. Again in sort of ribbons, and you can see how it's transforming the colours. A little bit over here, but not over all of that blue. Can you see how now we've got this has turned a lovely sort of golden peach. The blues down here have gone a sort of greenish shade. Just lovely. So give that a little push, and then I'm going to move it straight away, because again I don't mind if there's a little bit, there is a bit of gold in there, that's fine. Just move that, and then this will be the last bit of gold that we put in. So same thing again, a little bit maybe over here and a bit over here, a bit through the middle. So we're adding that sort of golden light that's mentioned in the book. Maybe just a little bit over that blue. I think that's enough. So crank up the heat and then make sure it's good and steamy. I don't ever boil my yarn because I don't like boiling yarn. I find if you just get it up to, hot so that you have to take your finger out straight away, I always find that that's plenty hot enough to set everything. So I've got steam rising on that already, so I'm just going to literally let that simmer for a couple of minutes and then pop it outside to cool down, and then we can get on with our tonal. Okay, so on to our coordinating tonal. So for this I'm going to use delphinium blue and gold ochre, but it's a really subtle colourway, we're not going to use a lot. The delphinium blue, I'm going to put about 1/4 of an 1/8 of a spoon into the pot. Oh, isn't it pretty? Can you see? I hope you can see this. It breaks into blue and then tons of pink. You can absolutely see the specks of pink breaking. Oh, it's so pretty. And then just a teeny bit of gold ochre, because we can always add a bit more, but I'm really going to go steady with this. So look, just a teeny bit, and it goes. So at the moment you can see the overall colour there is blue, but if I now mix, you should see it change. Oh gosh, it's the prettiest sort of slightly greenish blue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the yarn in, I'm going to have a look at it, and then we can adjust it with a bit more blue, a bit more gold if we need to. So let's just see what that looks like when we get our skein in. You can see there's not a lot of dye at all, so I think we're going to need a little bit more dye, but let's see what that looks like. So let's grab our yarn. And into the pot. So as I put it in, I'm just going to lift it back up and see the colour. Yeah, it looks good. So get that in fairly quickly. See, at the moment it does look quite green, but we're going to add a bit more blue. And that dye's just gone. And it's just such a pretty soft shade at the moment. But I am going to add a little bit more blue, because that's what I did last time. So just, a tiny bit of the blue. And I'm just going to build the colour until I am happy with the shade. Okay, just drop that back in quite quick. So I'm going to move the bit that is more blue up to the top there, so that this bottom bit gets a bit more blue. Hang on, notice there, look, looking at that. So I'm just going to put in a bit more blue. I think that's quite enough, it's a bit too subtle. You know, you can do a stronger shade if you want to, you know, you can add more dyes than I have if you want to get a stronger shade. That looks more like the colour that I remember. It's so pretty, you know, it's that shade in between blue and green. It's so lovely. I can see a beautiful pair of socks in this colour. So I'm going to now just let that cook for 2 minutes just to bring it up to the right temperature, and then as soon as that's, you know, too hot for me to put my finger in, I'll pop it out with the other one to cool down. Okay, so that's our yarn all dyed up. It's outside cooling down. So come back in part 2. We're going to get it in, we're going to get it dried, we're going to scale it up, and we're going to get to the knitting. So I'll see you back soon.
What a wonderful start, and what a wonderful book inspiration. Yeah. My goodness, it absolutely lit us up, this book. And you're going to be doing your reading corner review actually later on in the show, so I won't go into too much detail.
No.
But it really had a profound effect on Kay, which then really sort of impacted me and launched us into like a full-on love affair with World War II history and just finding out about it. So it's just been, you know, such a cool thing, really. Yeah,
it really has been. And I mean, I will go back and listen to this again. I actually started listening to it again because it's such an epically big book that I think, you know, if you left a bit of a gap, you could easily read it again or listen to it again. It's just fantastic. Yeah, but I will chat about it in the next
full review
section.
In the Reading Corner review,
yes.
The final one of the series coming up in part 2. Look, we have some wonderful What's Off Your Needles, and one is particularly exciting because it is the focus of this year's Sockoween. So without further ado, I shall say, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Yes, I've got 2 things today. So yeah, as Dan just said, the first of those is my refreshed, if you like, incantation socks. It's very Halloweeny, very Sockoweeny, and just is perfect for the theme of this year.
It's absolutely amazing, and it does look wonderful, particularly seasonal in these colours. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, the yarn is from 3 by the Sea Designs. Isn't it pretty? And it's one of their one-of-a-kind ones. It was called a salty skein, because I think it's classed as a one-of-a-kind. But I think it really looks like, was it called mixed berry tart? Somebody will tell me if I'm wrong with that. But you might have a skein of that, might you? Because I think that was a couple of years ago they did that colourway. Really, really pretty. It's all of the autumnal purples and deep reds and blues. It's fantastic, and it's worked up so prettily in the sock. So yeah, this is my incantation socks pattern, which I have done a pattern refresh, and I'm going to be uploading that refreshed pattern to Ravelry before Sockoween starts. So it'll be in that week, sometime in this next week, I would say. I will upload that to Ravelry. I will send out an update on Ravelry. So if you purchased this pattern previously, then you will get notification that I've done an update. This pattern also, I keep forgetting to say actually, but this pattern contains a bonus pattern of a DK weight version. It's just one size, but there's instructions on how to knit a DK weight version. And for that one, I used West Yorkshire Spinners Bo Peep yarn, which is a brilliant DK weight sock yarn. I think it's actually a baby yarn with a name like Bo Peep, I think it is, but it's stripes and it's in all these beautiful colours. And the colour I used then, I don't know if it's still available, because it was some years ago, but I think it was called Tin Man. But yeah, that's a great DK weight yarn that you can use for socks. So that bonus pattern is in there. So what I did with the pattern refresh, I thought, I said to Dan when I started it, gosh, honestly, I thought this would be quite a quick job. But in the end, it wasn't, because what I decided to do was to completely reformat the pattern, because it was done on different software that I was using at the time. So it looks a lot different to the patterns I do now. So I decided to just, like I say, completely reformat it, transfer everything into the software that I use now. And yeah, so it took some time, but it looks brilliant. And I re-edited all of the photos. I've used the original photos because they were lovely, but I have added in a photo of these socks as well, just with details of them. Just saying, you know, that the pattern was updated as part of Sockoween. Like I say, you'll get an update on Ravelry if you've purchased it in the past. If you are a silver and above patron, you don't need to buy it to participate in Sockoween. You will get the pattern free.
But of course, in Sockoween, the whole thing is a 6-part tutorial series. So whether you've bought...
It's not a tutorial.
Well, it sort of is.
Yeah, well, I suppose.
Because you tell them how to knit the socks.
We kept saying it was just a knit along.
It's a knit along, but it
sort of is a tutorial.
So,
yeah.
So it's a 6-part tutorial series where the designer of said socks takes you through every stage of knitting the socks from the start to the very end, which is so exciting. So whether you've bought the pattern before or not, join us for Sockoween this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you can anyway if you just want to just do the knit along. You know, so if you just want to knit along, you know, a different pair of socks,
you can knit any.
Yeah.
You can knit any
That's the
socks
purpose
you
of
want.
Sockoween.
You don't have to knit these socks.
No, this is just an idea.
This is just there for you if you want to use it.
Yes.
But you can knit whatever socks you want as long as they've got a Halloween theme.
There you go.
Yeah.
So come and join us. Great prizes. Kay will be talking about the prizes in our next patron-only show.
I've got some really exciting prizes.
And that patron-only show is on the 29th of September.
Yeah.
So she'll be telling you all about the prize then.
Don't miss that one for the prize information.
So Sockoween, it's going to be immense. You have something else, though, off your needles.
I do.
And I know this was also a cast on.
Yes, it was. So this off my needles was a new cast on. And Bryony's going off to uni, and she's got she's always used a hot water bottle. I've always used a hot water bottle, and her favourite the reason it was her favourite is because of the cover. So her favourite hot water bottle cover was this one, and it was actually knitted for me by a friend in America years ago. I can't even think how many years ago it was. And she sent it to me, and this has been the hot water bottle cover on Bryony's favourite bottle for years and years. However, it's just become really threadbare. I don't know what the yarn is. Can you see, look here, how threadbare it is? Which isn't good for a hot water bottle, is it? Because it's a bit hot. So I thought it was time to renew it. And at first I just thought I'll buy her one, right? So I did that. She didn't like it. Smells funny. Even though I washed it, I thought, right, I know she'll say it smells funny. It was just like a fluffy, you know, a nice soft one, like a fleecy one. So I put it through the washing machine, dried it, and everything smelled lovely to me. No, smells funny, Mum. Right, okay. I thought, right, okay. So I thought, do you know what? Let's just let's see if I can replicate this one. I don't know what yarn she used for this. It's really pretty, isn't it? But it definitely had some alpaca in it because you can see it. It's really soft. And I thought, well, I'll try and find the pattern because I know she will have used a pattern from Ravelry. The downside is that she doesn't use, I'm pretty sure she doesn't use Ravelry anymore. I couldn't find her on there. And I thought I can't research it that way. So I thought, right, I'll just search for hot water bottle covers and see if I spot it. Well, I think I did spot it. I'm certain it's this one. And it's a free pattern. The name of it's got a bit of an odd name. It's called the ISBN Hottie. And it's by Yarn A Go Go, and that's Rachel Heron. And Rachel is spelt with an AE and Heron is double R. Because ISBN, it's in the book, it's in books, isn't it? It's like because it's a free pattern, so I can show you, because this is the version that is sort of based on the name, I guess, because it looks like the barcode thingy of an ISBN reference in a book. But within this pattern, there's a cable version, and it's the cable version which was this one. I'm certain was this one, right? So then I had to try and find some yarn. Now the pattern calls for worsted weight, and I looked at what yarn was used. I can't remember now. It was something to do with lambs or sheep or something. And I looked at the sort of yardage and the thickness and the needle size. It uses 4.5mm. And I realised that in my stash I'd got a yarn that I thought might work. The one that I used in the end is a chunky weight, or bulky, I suppose, in other countries. But when I sort of compared the yardage, it was actually really similar. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to see if I can get gauged. I'm just going to give it a go. So I used, what I've used is this one, and it's from King Cole. I love King Cole. I wanted to say, he's a merry old soul. No, don't do it, Kay. So it's King Cole Hedgerow Chunky. And this colourway that I used is Crocus. And it comes in 200 gram balls. It's these gigantic balls. You can see I've used almost half of this one. So it's, yes, it's acrylic. However, everybody knows I only use premium acrylic. And luckily this is 100% premium acrylic. So all is good. And you get 332 yards to 200 grams. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. And it's worked perfectly, right? I measured my gauge when I'd knit a few inches of it, and it was spot on. I could not believe it. Spot on gauge, 4.5mm. It's a bit hard going on your hands, I'll say that, because this is a chunky weight, 4.5mm. But, you know, it was all right. So here's the bottle cover I made. Isn't it lovely? I love this yarn. Isn't this yarn just fantastic, the way it knits up? So the way that this works now, I did make a couple of changes. Nothing major. Isn't it lovely, the yarn? It would make a fantastic blanket, this yarn, I think. So the changes that I made, this is a free pattern, as I've said. So you cast, in the pattern, you use a 16-inch circular, a hat circular. You cast on a number of stitches, and then you do some increases here and here to get this sort of curvy bit here. The pattern instructions then at the end is that you seam this closed, just sew it together. Well, in the one that Sally sent me, she hadn't done that. She'd obviously done a, what's it called, you know, like a toe up cast on. So I thought, well, I can do that too, so that I don't then get any seams. Do you know what she's done? What my friend's done? Oh no, she hasn't. No, that's a bind off, that's not a cast on. I wondered if she'd knit it the other way around. Anyway, in any case, what I did was I did a Turkish cast on, because in my pattern, the umbrella socks, which is a toe up pattern with an afterthought heel, I used the Turkish cast on. I tried loads of different cast ons when I did that. Do you know toe up cast ons? What are they called? I can't remember the overall name for them. I used a Turkish cast on, that was my favourite. So I did a Turkish cast on. I followed my tutorial from that pattern because it's years since I've done it. Worked first time, perfectly, brilliant cast on, loved it. So easy and just perfect. So you can see if I hold you the bottom there, can you see? So that's the Turkish cast on. And then just carried on up. Now, one thing I noticed is, my cable, so the cable is a right-leaning cable, so you hold your cable needle to the back. But my friend must have done it the other way, because hers go the other way. And then I thought, maybe it's not the same pattern. But I actually counted the number of stitches around, and it's the same. So it's got to be the same pattern, because it's really the same. So, and I just worked up. I followed the pattern exactly. So you just do your increases here. You've then got bigger number for this bit, you work your panel all the way up for like 10 inches, and then you do some decreases here. And this is where I changed it slightly again, because in the pattern, the decreases, the way that they work, like on the first decrease round, she doesn't decrease right at the beginning of the round. So then you're missing that decrease. When you've finished them all, you've still got to do one more decrease to make it even. That didn't make sense to me. I thought I'm just going to do it like I do a toe. So I did decreases like I do on a toe, you know. You do one at the beginning and one at the end of each of the needles, because I knit this magic loop. Because you obviously can't do that Turkish cast on and knit on a 16-inch circular. You just can't do it. So I knit this magic loop. And I think, honestly, it worked better magic loop, because when you first cast on, you don't really have enough stitches to fit on a 16-inch. I'm not quite sure how she did it. It's okay once you've increased up, but I thought, I'm just going to do it magic loop. It's so much easier. And it was. And then you just decrease down and then do the ribbing here. The pattern tells you to knit something like 8 inches of rib here. That was too much. Again, I looked at what my friend had done and I thought, that's not 8 inches. I measured it and she'd done 6, so I did the same. And that's the perfect amount, because it's enough then to fold down and make like a polo neck jumper around your bottle. Perfect pattern, yarn brilliant, and I've got enough to knit another one. I weighed how much yarn I used and it was like 93 grams or something, so I've got enough to make another as like a gift or whatever. So that was a great project, but it took me 3 days and I did nothing else. But that's fine, isn't it? Because Bryony loves it and she appreciates it, and she loves it because her mum made it, and, you know, all the good things.
Cool! So it's time now to get back for the second part of the very final episode of the Yarny Book Club. How's the yarn coming out, and how will we knit it into the gorgeous cowl? Let's find out as we head back to the episode.
Welcome back everybody to part 2 of the Yarny Book Club. So our yarn is now having its little cool down outside, so it's time now to go and get cozied up in my reading corner for the very last time, and we'll have a little chat about the fantastic coming home. Okay, we are all now cozied up in my little reading corner, ready just to have a little chat about this epic book. This book is the story of Judith Dunbar, and at the beginning of the book it's Christmas 1935 and she's just broken up from school. She goes to just a sort of local school in Porthcerris. Is that actually a place in Cornwall? Sounds like it should be, doesn't it? She goes to the local school, she's got a best friend there, and her best friend, her parents run a shop in the town. I think it's a grocery shop. And Judith's about to leave that school because she's being taken out of it to go to boarding school. Her dad works in Ceylon, as it was called then, or it's Sri Lanka now, isn't it? He works over there, and Judith's mum and younger sister, she's got a sister who is quite a lot younger than her, about 10 years I think. So her and her mum and her younger sister are going out to be with the dad, to live with him over there. And because of Judith's age and the schooling situation, they want to leave her there to go to boarding school and sort of finish up her schooling in England. So she's been sent off to boarding school. She doesn't want to go. You know, she wants to stay in this local school with her friend, but she's got no choice, you know, she's got to go. So off she goes to boarding school, and at boarding school she meets a girl who becomes one of her best friends all the way through the book. She's called Loveday. I mean, the names in this sort of make me smile a bit. She's called Loveday Carey Lewis. I mean, I don't know anybody else called Loveday. Can you think of anybody with that name? But anyway, it really suits her. She's very kind of outgoing and boisterous, and kind of not the opposite of Judith, but Judith is much more of a thoughtful sort of girl, I would say. So they seem to contrast, but actually they become really good friends at boarding school. And Judith ends up going back to Loveday's house for one of the school holidays. I'm guessing it must be the Easter one. Loveday's parents are just lovely people and very, very characterful, let's say, but really, you know, really welcoming people. So she ends up being kind of adopted by Loveday's family because, you know, she's not got any family now. She does have sort of aunts and uncles and things, and they do come into it quite a lot, actually, into the story, but her parents are not there and her sister isn't there. So the story goes from there, really. It starts, like I say, when Judith was a sort of young teenager, and the people that she meets. I'm not going to give you all of the plot lines and, you know, people that Judith sort of becomes embroiled with and things like that, because I don't want to spoil it, but it really just tells her story from that young age all the way through her sort of later teenage years and then into adulthood. The war does play quite a big part in it, in terms of, you know, there's lots of, I mean, they're obviously living through it, so it's the sort of cornerstone of the way that they're all living. It's all governed by the fact that World War II is going on around them. Just reading about I suppose the social history of what went on during World War II, that really piqued my interest in it, and I just wanted to read more books that were based around World War II. And I did go on then to read a few more, just, you know, normal kind of romantic novels that are set during the war. Me and Dan then went on to find all sorts of things. We watched Band of Brothers, which was fantastic. We watched it twice, actually. Yeah, we then watched Masters of the Air, which was sort of like Band of Brothers but based around the RAF, and it just fantastic. It just led us down this path of learning loads and loads of stuff about World War II. Really interesting, and I think it made me realise just, I think, how important it is that we don't forget about the war. I'm really thankful to this book, because it's this book that then led me down that path to learn all about it and get sort of embroiled in it. But yeah, I mean, back to the story, you know, it's just this epic story, and I absolutely loved it. I will definitely go back and listen to it again, you know, as I flick through it now. It's funny, isn't it, when you've listened to a book and then when you actually look at the words on the page, it seems different, doesn't it? So I think it would be nice, actually, to read it with my eyes as well as sort of going back and re-listening to it. So it's time now to go and get our yarn from outside. It'll be nicely cooled down and we can get it all rinsed and dried and ready to start knitting. Okay, so I've got a lovely bowl of soapy water here with I need to get some more of this, everyone, it's nearly all gone. My lavender eucalypt. And let's get this skein in. Squidge out some of that water. And let's get it in. So we'll give it a nice rinse just to get rid of the citric acid primarily, and just to make sure that all of those dye particles that might have been lying on the surface are also gone. And the water's completely clear. The water we'd used to dye in is completely clear. So we've got a good set of our colours, and it just looks beautiful, doesn't it? I love seeing yarn with all the soap suds on. I think it's really lovely. And that'll be fine. So just squidge off. Oh, it looks so pretty. Give it a bit of a shake. Lovely. You can see some of those blues in there. Really pretty in there, look. So I will now get this tonal all rinsed. We'll get them dry and then we can get to the knitting. So here we go. We've got our beautiful skein. Oh, I just love it so much. We've got lots of those pinks, and it goes into like this sort of fairly bright, not bright, fairly deep peach. We've got all of those gold tones, the golden sunlight coming through, and then we get hints of the blue sea here, and where the gold has hit it, it turns that slightly sort of greenish sea blue, you know, that kind of greenish bluish that I was talking about. It's just such a pretty shade, and I can't wait to knit it in. I think it's going to be the perfect way to finish the cowl, just thinking about all the colours that have come before. So I mean, we'll have a look at that before I start knitting. But of course the first thing I need to do is get this lovely thing wound up. And then we will snip that last tie. So we want to find the strand that's coming from the outside, and that's that one. And let's get winding for the last time this season. Okay, I mean it went okay, it didn't go brilliantly well. It kept slipping, and look, do you ever find this where you get like, you know, it gathers here? It kind of, as it's winding, it slips down and it's on the bottom of your cake. When that happens, I just sort of tuck it into the middle, and when you get to that point of the cake, when you're knitting, I just sort of pull it back out again. It's not a disaster. So there we go, our yarn is dried, it's all skeined up, and it's ready to go. So we need to sit down, don't we? We need to get our cowl out, we'll have a little look at where it's at, and it's time to get knitting that final section. Right, we can get to the knitting, so exciting. So here's what our cowl is looking like now. After 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colours, and then this is going to be our 6th. Isn't it pretty? I do love all of the colours, and it's interesting to see how it transitioned from sort of this quite wintry colour that we did right at the very beginning, and then through to this beautiful Christmas holiday wasn't it? This one inspired yarn, and I actually used this exact yarn for my latest sock pattern for the frosted socks because I loved it so much. And isn't it just the most beautiful colourway, this one? The speckles are just absolutely fantastic. And now we've got this lovely colour to come in for the final stripe. I think it's just going to be perfect, isn't it? Just looking at the colours. This has got pink tones in it definitely, but it was more of a red, wasn't it, this that we used? And you can see a lot of the purple as well, and the green. So this one I think reads more pink certainly than this one. And I think it's just going to finish it off absolutely beautifully. So I've already knit my contrast stripe here, you can see. So this is the last contrast stripe with our lovely Miss Havisham. So all we've got left to do now is the one stripe of Coming Home, and then it'll be the rib at the bottom in Miss Havisham, and it'll be finished. So let's get going. Let's just pull out some yarn. Now if you remember from the previous sections, what we do is whenever we change colour, you can see here, we just do a little detail which helps define the colour changes, I think. And all we're going to do is first round, so we're changing colour now, so round 1 is just plain knit. Round 2 is knit 1, purl 1, and then for the coloured sections, rounds 3 to 20 are just plain knit. So that's what we're going to do with this lovely yarn. So I'm just going to get started, and then obviously I will knit through this section and I will show you when we're back in the studio. But let's just finish off, that's the last stitch of Miss Havisham there. So slip that, and then we're going to bring in this one, leave a tail for weaving in, and then just start knitting. So this first round is plain knit. I always sort of grab onto those 2 tails there, because then I can tension this quite nicely for those first couple of stitches after I've changed colour, and that stops you getting sort of those, because it can, when you change yarn, you can get like a couple of bigger stitches, can't you? That just avoids that. This pattern, the Reading Corner cowl, I will be writing up the pattern, and I'm going to put it into this year's Christmas Knitability. And I've actually, what I've done for that is I've worked out a way of how you can turn this into a project for an advent calendar of yarns. So you can break it down into 24 sections. So I'm going to put that into the Knitability as well. So I will put in the pattern as it is here, and then I'll just write up an extra little section telling you what to knit each day if you want to work through an advent calendar to knit one of these. So that's really fun, I think. So yeah, I'm away, and I just can't wait to see how this knits up. I think it's going to be the prettiest colourway. And already I'm loving that pink and sort of slightly peach that's coming through, and I'm dying to get to a little blue stitch. That'll be exciting. So there we go, I'm away and knitting the final section with the final colourway for this series. So I really hope you've enjoyed working through all of these colours with me, looking at all of the books, and I hope you've enjoyed reading some of the books if you fancied picking one up. Becoming Home, I would definitely recommend. Absolutely fantastic book, and just the perfect way to end this series. Now, don't panic if you think, oh, that's the last time we're going to see you in the kitchen with your dye pots. Don't worry, because I will be back in January with a brand new 12-part series, keeping everything else secret, but I will be back. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me with this series. I really hope you've enjoyed dyeing your yarns, reading your books and knitting your cowl. And I will see you back in January for a brand new series.
What a finish to an absolutely wonderful series. And oh yes, the cowl is right here, isn't it?
It is. So before I show you the cowl, I'll just show you that tonal yarn that I dyed up. Now this came out much more, slightly variegated to how I've dyed it before. It was much more tonal before, but it's so pretty. It's a duck egg. It's actually the colour of our walls in here, right? It really is exactly the same colour. So can you see the wall colour behind Dan here? See this? It's that colour, but it's just not showing properly. But it's this gorgeous tonal, like duck egg, sea green colour that's looking completely blue to my eyes in this skein. But it's a beautiful, beautiful colour. So that was the coordinating. And here is the cowl. Now, I've finished knitting that section into it, and it just looks beautiful. I think it's turned out so pretty. It's like this sort of full of, like, it's speckled, but not, it's softly speckled. They're very blurred, the speckles, because we didn't, do proper speckles, if you like. But it's such a beautiful colourway. We've got those pinks and peaches with hints of the sea blue in there. Just lovely. And I think it's perfect for the theme. And this is it, just in the skein. So pretty. Now, I haven't fully finished the cowl, as you can see. I've finished that section, knitted in the same way as the instructions for all the other coloured sections. Isn't it pretty? I haven't finished the ribbing yet because I was just having a think about how I wanted to knit the ribbing, and because I'm going to try and mirror it at both ends, but it's really difficult to do that with ribbing because you're knitting it in the other direction, so it doesn't quite work in the same way. And when I did it down here, I actually started this first coloured section. You might not remember, but I started it doing one of the little textured sections. And in hindsight, I wouldn't have done that. So I think what I'm going to do is work the other end in the way that I would have done this. And then when I put this pattern into Knitability, I'll just write it out as, I would have wanted it ideally. It doesn't make a difference if people are knitting along with me, you've got that little texture at the beginning here. You can put that little texture at the end here and it'll then match a bit more. But because we are knitting in one direction and it's not a mirror, we've not knit it from the centre going out like that, it doesn't exactly match. So I'm just having to think about that. So it should be in the next episode, but might be the one after, I'm not sure yet. Once I've fully finished it, I'll tell you what I did, so that then if you want to do exactly what I did, you can do that. Or you can just go ahead and finish it now and do your ribbing as it's done at the bottom, but in the other direction if you feel confident enough to do that. So yeah, I think it's beautiful. I love the way it looks with all the colours. And it's been such a fun thing to do.
Amazing. And that'll be shared in this Christmas's Knitability.
Yes.
Wonderful. It's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Oh my goodness. So the frosted socks, as we mentioned earlier, are now out and available to purchase. Oh,
Here
yes.
are said socks.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, so they're all finished, pattern done like we said before, and you can go ahead now and purchase this if you want to knit your own beautiful frosted socks.
Wonderful. And the latest issue of our magazine is available to read right now. An absolutely amazing, spooky, sort of Sockweeny, really fun episode featuring interviews with designer Brianna Lupino, also yarn shop owner Brianne Johnson. And also there's a visit to Pittsburgh's annual Steel Valley yarn crawl.
Wow.
And so much more. That was hard to say.
That was hard to say.
And lots of other sort of articles and all sorts of fun goodness. And that issue is out now. Sockaween starts on the 1st of October.
It does.
But the sort of patron special launch show is on the 29th of September in our next patron-only show.
Don't miss it. It's going to be super fun.
That will be available to watch by Silver Gold and Platinum patrons live at 2 p.m. British Summer Time on the 29th, or all patrons, absolutely all patrons, can watch the recording of the show after 3:10 on the day of the episode.
And we'll be back from uni then, so we'll be able to give you the whole lowdown on what happened.
Well, we'll also be doing an episode of the radio show, which will be called The Empty Nesters. And I think the episode after that should be called The Honeymoon.
Oh, yeah.
More about that later on in our lives.
Yes.
And that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching.
Yay.
We'll see you in
everybody.
2 weeks with a brand new episode, which will be featuring England, a castle nation. Did you see how I did the pause?
Yes, got to do it.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery players. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery players. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery pair. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down